everybody, and welcome to today's podcast where I'm joined again by Maeve. How are you today, Maeve?
I am great today, Aisling. Thank you.
Good, and thank you for coming in again to us. We have this is a very interesting topic, and one which I know will be very informative to listeners out there. And what we're going to talk about is muscle loss and how concerned people are with regard to losing muscle. So it's one thing, and Maeve will know this from consulting herself, that we are always emphasizing to clients is to protect your muscle, that you do not want to lose muscle when you're losing weight. And our experience and research would show that that is what happens a lot of people when they go on a diet, when they decrease calories. They are also losing muscle tissue. They end up looking gaunt. I know I've heard feedback, and Maeve, I'm sure you have as well, that some clients get a bit nervous then because they're hearing people are saying that maybe rumors about them, oh, such and such isn't well, she's very ill, or there's something negative going on. So it's very important to protect the muscle. So I think the way we do that obviously is by recommending a certain amount of protein. And Maeve, you're going to talk about the amount of protein recommended per kilogram of body weight. And the beauty is, again, on the motivation program, that we are not just weighing people. Besides looking at habits, behaviors and attitudes to help keep weight off long term with our mental weight questionnaire, we are looking at muscle loss, if there's possible muscle loss, on our body fat analysis machine. So it's something, Maeve, I know, and you know from doing it yourself, that we're constantly saying to clients, you do not want to lose muscle. And the protein supplements obviously will help with that as well. So I know also we have talked about exercise then, that if people start exercising, they're obviously going to need to protect muscle even more. So I know, Maeve, you had talked to me earlier about exercise resistance and protecting muscle. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about that?
Happily, Aisling. Yeah, there's two things here. As Aisling says, when people go on a weight loss program, that they can lose some muscle. And the great thing about our program is it's designed to prevent that. So we are ensuring that somebody is eating in a certain way that's going to protect muscle, and the only thing they're losing is fat. So that's a number one. But as an aside, I just wanted to talk about the actual official term is sarcopenia, which is that as we get older, and that this happens from the age of as young as 25 or 30 onwards, that we're all losing muscle year on year, okay? The thing to prevent that is the type of food we eat and the type of exercise we do, okay? So it's not inevitable. But I want to it's quite a shocking thing for people to hear when we say that you will lose, if you do nothing about this, that you can lose up to 10 pounds of muscle per decade from the age of 30 onwards. So to put that into real figures, it's by the age of about 50, a woman could stand on the scales and she could say, I'm the same weight as I was when I got married, and she's thrilled with herself, but she may have lost as much as 1.5 stone of muscle. Wow. And when you do that, you replace it often with 1.5 stone of fat, okay? So obviously that's a huge threat to our health. It's not going to look too great because, you know, your muscle tone does not look good. So it's not something to be delighted about. If anything, you need to do something about that. So sarcopenia is the word. Sarcopenia. Okay. So the thing to prevent that, and just to say to you, anybody listening, don't be disheartened if you are in your 50s or your 60s or your 70s, because it's 100% possible to regain that muscle, and quite quickly, which is a wonderful thing. And just a lot of people talk about middle-age spread. This is what I find frustrating, because when I've looked into this, we all kind of take it as an inevitable thing that's going to happen. You know, I'll get to a certain age and I'll get the middle-age spread, and it's nothing I can do about it, which is completely untrue. The reason why we're probably putting on weight is because we are losing muscle. And muscle is metabolically active. It demands something from our bodies. It burns calories even when we're asleep. So if we lose muscle, everything slows down and we inevitably do put on weight. So what can we do about it? The most powerful thing, without question, is exercise, okay? And not just cardio. I don't want people to be turned off, but really a bit of strength or resistance training. Now that can be Pilates, yoga. It can be Aquafit. I know we have a lot of clients doing that. It can be going into the gym. And I just for a brief moment, can I just plug the gym thing? I hated the gym when I was younger, and I used to go. I used to make myself go when I was in London about 3 times a week. I saw absolutely no difference in my body. Nothing really changed because, of course, my food wasn't great. But now I go once a week to a personal trainer, and it's been honestly life-changing in the last 2 years in terms of controlling my weight and so much more. Because that 1 hour session, we do real quality work, and I lift quite heavy weights that I wouldn't have dreamed of before. That's engaging my muscles. And what happens when I looked into this, there's a process that people might have heard of called EPOC or EPOC, and it's basically the afterburn. So what happens is it sounds a little bit gruesome, but when we lift weights, little tiny tears occur in our muscles. And for the next it can go on for about 2 or 3 days. Through that period, our body, the metabolism goes into overdrive to try and heal the muscle. And it basically burns a lot of calories. Okay. So that's happening. And at the same time, you're building muscle, week on week, so that every pound of muscle that you're gaining, you're actually increasing your basic metabolic rate. So it's just a win-win. The other thing, Aisling, is food. You mentioned protein, and absolutely we know that small regular inputs of protein are the thing that basically, I use the word feeds muscle. And we know that 12% of men and 24% of women aged about 70 or over eat underneath the recommended amount. Okay, so that's a problem. And the recommended amount is 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. You don't need to worry too much about, I wouldn't get into grams too much. I would just say, if you're following the motivation program, you're absolutely getting adequate protein.
Plenty of protein, absolutely. And what something that you mentioned there with regard to losing muscle, the heart is a muscle. So from a health point of view, I think that's a huge thing as well, because we're dealing with obviously clients who are overweight, who may have heart issues already. We've talked about that in another podcast, and visceral fat, etc. So that's a huge thing. And I think it might be nice to explain to listeners the whole ketosis process, which some of our eating plans have. So normally, as you know, Maeve, when clients are trying to, or well, not clients, when most people would go on ordinary everyday diets, they aren't getting, usually they reduce calories, they're not getting the sugar, they're not getting the carbohydrates, and that is usually the first energy source, as we know, that the body will use, go to for energy. So obviously on most eating plans, everyone knows about low GI now, etc. So normally then, if you reduce the sugar, the carbs, the second port of call, as we know, the body will turn to is muscle. So it will actually eat up its own muscle. So the beauty of the kind of eating plans that we use, we are with the protein, one of the functions of protein, as we know, is to protect muscle tissue. So it's like it's putting a barrier up against the muscle. So the body's not getting the sugar or the carbs. It can't get at the muscle now. So the only option it has is to eat up pure fat. And that is a simple explanation of ketosis, which we have eating plans that help with that. And I think you've mentioned before, and we've all talked about, Maeve, how we would say to people, this is not a diet. If you think of protein as petrol, so it's important you eat every 3 to 4 hours. We have our specific eating plans. Then you're protecting the muscle. Clients, if anything, and I think if you see our success stories on our website, you will see they don't have that gaunt look. So I know you used an analogy there as well for the protein, and I came across one actually only recently that I thought was nice too. We always think of it as petrol, but the one I saw was, think of your caloric deficit as a lion that's about to eat you. If you give the lion another source of meat, you might be able to get away without getting bitten. I kind of like that one. I thought that was nice.
That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. And it's a small regular. I think also, just to make it clear to people that this is not an extremely high protein diet. That's what I find interesting as well about motivation is, actually people that come into us, they might, because we reduce their portions, they might actually, be eating, it's a different level of protein. It's the small regular inputs that matter. And actually, the body, this is what I find interesting, the body can only absorb a certain amount of protein per sitting. So you're not doing yourself favors by sitting down to eat 2 huge steaks at the same time, because the body can only use so much at one time. So that's the thing is, as you said, like feeding the lion regularly, doing some resistance training to build the muscle, and that combined program is ideal. And really, it's always possible to regain that muscle that you've lost. And you don't need to be, I also think in gyms, if you could be a little bit open to maybe going to the gym. What was life-changing for me is I used to think I had to be in the gym 3 or 4 times a week, which would be great, but I really can only manage one. But one really good session per week is enough to help me with my muscle. Sorry, I do other exercise, which is walking and so on, but that's just the commitment to the gym. You don't need to be young. You don't need to have super fancy gear. You don't need to be a certain age. Like, just go in, give it a go. And, a personal trainer would be more than happy to help a man or woman of any age to start working on their muscle.
And I think looking at you, people, I know you hear this probably, Maeve, as well, that people are also concerned, I don't want to end up with too much muscle and beefy and all that business. So, you're looking at you have a fabulous figure. You're not bulked up on muscle. And I think you mentioned something that's very important there as well, is that it's not high protein.
Yeah.
So, Maeve, you and I know, I'm sure you've heard it as well over the years, that people will come in and say, is it high protein? And I've heard high protein is damaging to your kidneys, etc. And you're right, too much protein. So I think for our listeners also, be aware, of protein supplements out there, because there are some, and you may see them in the gym or in the shops, are more for bodybuilders.
Yes.
There are protein supplements that would be too high in protein. Yeah. So the protein supplements that we have specifically for our plans and for losing weight are to make sure that people are not building too much muscle, and there's not hidden sugars in them either, which we need to be careful about. So interesting when you say about the gym, and I love that you say that, we're all time precious nowadays, and you've a young family like myself. And certainly I found even doing my own weights. I bought the light dumbbells in Argos or Boots a long time ago. I have the resistance band, and literally I lie in the bed in the morning. I just have to stretch my legs or whatever. Brilliant. So it is, I think sometimes we said before, don't make excuses. And when you take the first step, as you said, you never thought you'd like gyms, take the first step. And as I say, you are a perfect example of, you can see maybe your muscle is toned, you know. So I think hopefully that's helpful, guys, about how not to lose muscle loss, because the last thing you want to do is look unwell. And as I say, go on our website, you'll see success stories. They look very well. They don't have that gaunt look. And the thing is also, when you lose muscle, you can regain it. So very important. And particularly the men on our program, I'm sure you have found as well, Maeve, obviously, and the taller the man, the more protein or protein supplements he needs. Obviously they are very, very conscious about, they don't want to lose muscle tissue.
Yes.
Actually,
just that's an interesting point when you mentioned men. Often, women can give out saying, why, we go on a weight loss program and my husband seems to lose weight so quickly. Just so people know, that's because men have a lot more muscle than women. It's a fact. So their metabolism is quicker. So they have that on their side.
So don't compare.
No, absolutely.
Don't compare.
No.
And, on that note, Maeve, you have mentioned we're talking about partners. We hope to cover another podcast, and we're going to talk about how to support your partner. So I look forward to talking to you then, Maeve. And thank you, listeners, for listening. We'll talk to you soon.